I always thought my dad saw me. I mean, really saw me. Not just as a daughter, but as a person. I got straight A's all through high school, worked weekends at a bakery since I was 15, and spent nights studying for scholarships. He would pat me on the head and say, "You're the smart one. You'll go far." But I didn't know then what going far meant to him. Not until my acceptance letter to Stanford came in. And the funding didn't. "I used the money," he said, just like that. Casual, over breakfast, scrambled eggs, burnt toast, and a side of betrayal. "Your brother needed a push. You'll understand one day." My hands were shaking. "What money?" "Your college fund," he replied, unfazed. "I put it into the new business. Your brother's got potential, but he needs guidance, structure, a bit of capital." I remember feeling like the room was tilting. My college fund? The one Mom started when I was 5? The one I never touched, even when we couldn't afford field trips or new shoes? All for Ethan. Ethan, my older brother by 2 years. Ethan, who barely passed high school, who dropped out of 2 community colleges, who couldn't hold a job longer than a few months. That Ethan now had a trendy new bar downtown, funded with my future. And my dad just laughed. Laughed. "You'll thank me later," he said, sipping his coffee. "Family helps each other." I didn't laugh. I didn't even cry. I just nodded slowly, stood up from the table, and walked away from the life I thought I knew. I moved out within the week, slept on my friend Maya's couch, and picked up 2 waitressing jobs. Every dollar I earned, I saved. I couldn't afford Stanford anymore, but I enrolled in night classes at the local college. I didn't have time for self-pity, and I never stepped foot into that bar. Not once. 3 months after I moved out, I saw Ethan on a billboard. "Padio 66, where good times begin," it read, with his smug face in front of neon lights and cocktail glasses. He was posing like some celebrity mixologist, even though he couldn't make scrambled eggs without calling Mom. I stood at the bus stop, staring up at it, my fingers tightening around my work apron. The same apron I wore to clean puke out of booths at the diner, where I made minimum wage, while Ethan got my Stanford tuition poured into liquor and LED lights. According to Maya, who still talked to people from high school, the bar had become a hot spot. College kids went there for theme nights. Some minor local influencer filmed a TikTok there, and suddenly it was the place to be. Ethan soaked it up, giving interviews, acting like he built it all himself. Dad loved it. He bragged to everyone at church about his boy making it big. Meanwhile, I hadn't heard from either of them since I moved out. But I was too busy to wallow. My life was a calendar of late-night study sessions, 9-hour shifts, and penny counting. Every Friday night, I passed by Patio 66 on the way to the bus. The music pulsed through the windows, girls lined up in heels and glitter, bouncers laughing at inside jokes. Ethan never saw me. I stayed in the shadows, invisible by design. Then, in December, something strange happened. I was closing up the cafe when a man in a cheap suit came in, eyes darting. He asked to speak to the manager. I was wiping counters and only half listening. But when he mentioned investors backing out of Patio 66, I froze. Later that night, I called Maya. She used to babysit Ethan's ex, and word traveled fast in our town. "Yeah," she said, lowering her voice. "He overextended, rented too much space, tried to open a second location, got into debt with some people who aren't exactly banks." I blinked. "So the bar's not doing well?" "It's a mess," she confirmed. "But your dad's covering it. He took out a loan." I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, feeling 1,000 things at once. Anger, disgust, pity, maybe. But buried under that was something else. Clarity. They wouldn't stop. Not unless someone made them. That night, I pulled out my notebook and began sketching ideas. Not for revenge. Not yet. for something else, something better. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. It felt too fragile to speak aloud, like a match I had to protect from the wind. By day, I worked tables. By night, I studied small business management, accounting, and marketing. I borrowed every book the community college library had on entrepreneurship. I watched free lectures online during my lunch breaks and took notes on napkins. I wasn't just dreaming anymore, I was preparing. And I started small. A pop-up bakery stand on weekends. Maya helped me bake at first. Her cinnamon rolls were legendary in our neighborhood. We'd set up at the park across town, far from Patio 66, and offer samples to dog walkers and parents with strollers. I called it Whisk and Bloom, light, hopeful. Within weeks, we had a small but loyal crowd. A retired woman named Esther came every Saturday for the lemon scones. One day, she said, "You remind me of myself when I was young. Except you're smarter." Those words stuck with me more than they should have. Meanwhile, things got worse for Ethan. The second location never even opened. Rumors swirled about unpaid suppliers, a liquor license issue, a near bar fight involving one of his silent partners. But the family stayed silent. When I ran into my aunt at the grocery store, she said, "Your father's under a lot of stress. Be kind. Ethan's trying his best." Trying his best? I wanted to scream. With my money? But I smiled, nodded, said nothing. Then, one Sunday morning, I saw Dad at the bank. I ducked behind a column, watching through the glass. He looked older, not just tired, worn. His posture, once so rigid and proud, now sagged like a balloon losing air. He came out alone, staring down at a paper in his hand. When he reached his car, he gripped the steering wheel but didn't get in. Just sat there. For the first time in months, I felt something I didn't expect. Sadness. He didn't see me. I don't think he would have known what to say if he had. That night, I opened my notebook and flipped past all my scratchy business notes. I made a new page, a goal, by Patio 66. It sounded ridiculous, like something out of a movie. But the more I stared at those words, the more they anchored me. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. This was about proving I could do more with the ashes than Ethan ever did with the fire. The first time someone offered to buy out a batch of muffins before noon, I realized Whisk and Bloom wasn't just a weekend hobby anymore. It was becoming a name, something people talked about, something customers drove across town for. It was still humble. Fold-out tables, homemade signs, and second-hand tablecloths. But every dollar I earned, I documented like gold. I opened a business account, applied for a cottage license, built a website using a free template, and took photos of scones in my tiny kitchen using borrowed ring lights. I didn't sleep much, but for once, the exhaustion felt like purpose. The turning point came in spring. A woman in a black blazer and gold heels approached our table during the farmer's market. "You're the one behind Whisk and Bloom?" she asked. Her tone was clipped, curious. Not friendly, but not cold either. I nodded, tucking a loose hair behind my ear. "I own a boutique cafe on 7th. One of my regulars brought in your cherry crumble and swore it was the best she'd had in 20 years. I don't usually outsource pastries, but I'd like to discuss a partnership." I didn't blink, didn't gasp. Just said, "Yes." "I'm interested." We set up a meeting the following week. Her cafe was sleek, minimalist, overpriced. Exactly the kind of place where influencers took selfies with pastel macarons. She wanted exclusivity. My branding. A rotating menu. It wasn't just a foot in the door, it was a leap. I signed the contract with trembling fingers. Meanwhile, Patio 66 was unraveling in public. Someone posted a scathing review on social media, accusing Ethan's staff of mishandling food orders and management ignoring harassment complaints. The post went viral. Local news picked it up. Health inspectors paid a visit. By the end of the month, the neon sign out front flickered unevenly at night, like it had a pulse, weak and sputtering. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. Ethan still had a roof over his head, still drove the BMW Dad helped him lease. But the foundation beneath him was finally cracking. And Dad? He barely left the house. I knew from Maya that the bank was threatening to seize a property he co-signed for. My mother, quiet as ever, had started selling her jewelry. But no one called me. Not a single message. Not a whisper of apology or concern. They had made their choice. I had made mine. What they didn't know was that I had quietly started speaking with a real estate agent. Not about houses. About bars. More specifically, how to value one in distress. I didn't walk into Patio 66 until it was already halfway hollow. It was Maya's idea. You need to see it. You can't make a move if you don't understand the space, the bones. She wasn't wrong, but I hesitated. I wasn't sure what would be worse, seeing it fall apart, or seeing it still clinging to life. We went on a Tuesday afternoon. Dead hours. The kind no bar wanted, but had to survive. Inside, the music was low, like it had given up. The furniture was worn down, the walls still trying to look trendy with last year's paint. The once vibrant mural was faded, chipped at the edges. A man behind the bar looked up, disinterested, barely acknowledging us. "Is Ethan here?" I asked. The bartender shrugged. "Haven't seen him in days." I looked around, trying to imagine the place in my hands. Not as a bar, but as something new. Something mine. I'd spoken to a commercial agent named Rob a few days prior. He specialized in small food and beverage spaces, especially distressed ones. Patio 66 was technically still leased, but behind on payments. The LLC paperwork was a mess. Ethan's liquor license was flagged. Rob told me, "If you want it, you won't be buying a business. You'll be buying a carcass." It didn't scare me. If anything, it thrilled me. I had already built something once, from flour and sugar and sweat. I could do it again, and this time I'd build it on the ruins they left behind. That same week, I called in every favor I had. Maya's cousin was a CPA. My cafe partner knew a silent investor who occasionally backed food startups. I set up coffee meetings, printed mock business proposals, designed a new concept for the space. The Orchard, a bakery wine bar hybrid with weekend live music and local artists. At night, I rehearsed pitches in my mirror. By morning, I was booking appointments. One evening, I stopped by the family house. I didn't go in. I just stood across the street. The curtains were drawn. The porch light flickered. My mother's flower bed was dying, brown stems bent to the dirt. It looked like no one had watered it in weeks. Then I saw him, my father, sitting on the porch in silence, not reading, not smoking, just staring ahead. I almost crossed the street, almost. But then the door opened, and Ethan stepped out. Laughing, on the phone, oblivious, like nothing was falling apart around him. My father turned to look at him, and smiled. That was enough for me. I turned around and walked away. It was a Thursday afternoon when I finally got the call. Rob, my commercial real estate contact, sounded cautious. "Look," he said. "I spoke with the landlord. They're tired. Ethan's behind 3 months on rent. The health inspection fines are unpaid, and the liquor license is under review. But they're not selling to just anyone. It's sentimental. First commercial lease they ever signed." I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. "And," he sighed, "they agreed to a meeting. If you can prove funding and a vision, it's yours to pitch. But here's the twist. Ethan has to sign off." I felt the ground tilt slightly beneath me. "Why?" "He has partial control of the leasehold rights under his LLC. They need him to release it before a new tenant can take over." Otherwise, it'll be court battles, delays, liens. I was quiet for a moment. I had prepared for many things. Facing Ethan directly wasn't one of them. I'll talk to him, I said finally. My voice didn't shake. It took 2 days to track him down. Not at the bar. He hadn't shown up there in over a week. But at a friend's pool party, posted on someone's public Instagram. I didn't want to do this in front of others. So I waited outside his building. That same night, he pulled up around 11 in the BMW, music thumping, the passenger seat empty for once. He barely noticed me until I stepped in front of his car. He slammed the brakes, horn blaring. Then he saw me, rolled down the window. What the hell? I walked around, opened the passenger door, and got in without asking. He stared at me like I was a ghost. You've got some nerve? I want patio 66, I said. Silence. What? He scoffed. You want to gloat? You've been waiting for this, haven't you? No, I said calmly. I want to buy it. Clean, legal. You sign over what's left of the LLC and lease rights. I take it. You walk away. He laughed. Laughed like our father did the morning he stole my future. You? You think you can run it better than me? I don't think, I know. He shook his head, leaning back in his seat. Unbelievable. You really think you're better than me? No, I said, turning to him. I think I'm done cleaning up after you. This is me offering you a lifeline. You're drowning, Ethan, and I'm the only one who even bothered to throw you a rope. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, What's in it for me? You get to walk away with no lawsuits, no debt collectors banging on your door. I assume the lease, the space, and the liabilities. You go do whatever you do. For once, you don't burn everything down on your way out. His face hardened. Dad would never approve. I met his gaze. Dad doesn't own it. You do. And if you stall this, I'll make sure every investor you ever think to contact knows your record. He didn't answer that. I got out, shut the door gently, and left him there. Alone, with the engine running. 2 days passed before I heard from Ethan. I was rolling out croissant dough at sunrise when my phone buzzed. A text. Just one word. Fine. No hello, no conditions. Just fine. It felt anticlimactic. But I didn't care. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Rob. Within hours, I had an appointment with the landlord and their attorney. I printed every document, every projection, every outline of the orchard's vision. Maya sat across from me in the cafe that morning, sipping coffee while I rehearsed. You're about to take over the space your dad destroyed your future for, she said quietly. How do you feel? I thought about it. Truly thought about it. Like I'm finally waking up, I said. The meeting was in a downtown office. Clean lines, cold lighting. The landlord, Mr. Kenner, was a gray-haired man in his 60s, with sharp eyes and a surprisingly kind demeanor. I have to admit, he said after my pitch, I didn't expect someone your age to walk in here so prepared. I smiled. My age taught me early not to waste time. He flipped through the folder in silence, his lawyer reading beside him. After 10 minutes, he leaned back. Assuming Ethan's formal withdrawal and the LLC transfer go through as planned, the space is yours. I like the concept. It's bold, but rooted. My chest tightened. So, that's it. You'll need to cover the outstanding lease balance, of course, he added. Roughly $17,000. I assume your investor is still committed. He is, I said. And he was. A quiet backer introduced by my cafe partner, willing to front the gap in exchange for a minor stake. Then yes, Kenner said, it's yours, if you want it. I do. The handshake sealed it. By nightfall, I had the keys. I stood alone inside patio 66, the neon letters flickering overhead like a ghost trying to haunt its own grave. The smell of beer and old grease still clung to the walls. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I took off my jacket, rolled up my sleeves, and started ripping down the posters. One by one. Ethan's face, gone. Fake awards, gone. Cocktail menus with names like Liquid Chaos and Daddy's Tab, gone. The next morning, I called a painter. I want light, I told him. Clean colors, sage, cream, maybe some rosewood. The painter looked around. You're gutting the whole thing? I nodded. Top to bottom. Outside, the old Patio 66 sign still hung. I took a picture of it. Then I emailed a sign maker. Subject line, new exterior sign, the orchard. Renovation began on a Monday. The first few days were demolition. Gritty, sweaty, cathartic. I swung a hammer through drywall like it owed me money. Maya helped on weekends, and we hired 2 contractors for the heavy lifting. Old booths were ripped out, the bar sanded down to its bones. I kept nothing of Ethan's, not a single light fixture or tap handle. This wasn't a remodel, it was an exorcism. And slowly, the space began to breathe again. We replaced blacked-out windows with tall panes that caught the morning light. The walls were painted cream, with accents of sage green and dusty rose. The bar became a countertop for pastries during the day and wine tastings in the evening. Soft lighting, live plants, acoustic playlists. No neon, no shouting. The orchard started to bloom. Quietly, steadily. The hardest part was silence. I hadn't told my parents. I didn't know if Ethan had. Part of me wondered if they even cared. But word got around. Small towns have loud whispers. One afternoon, while I was reviewing tile samples with the contractor, I heard the door swing open. I turned, expecting a delivery. It was my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Like the weight of the past year had folded her inward. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her as she stepped inside. "This was your brother's place," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "It was never his. It just had his name on the lease." She looked around. Her eyes lingered on the fresh paint, the torn-down signage, the pastry case that hadn't yet been filled. "I heard," she whispered. "Your aunt told me. You bought it?" I nodded. Her lips parted, then shut again. I waited. I wasn't going to fill the silence for her. "I didn't know," she said. "We didn't know how bad things got with him. Your father, he protected him from everything, even from us." I swallowed hard. "I know." She looked at me then. Really looked. And something flickered in her eyes. Grief, maybe. Regret. "Your father won't come," she added. "Not yet. He says he doesn't understand you anymore." "That's fine," I said. "I'm not doing this for him." My mother's voice broke. "I should have protected you, back then." I didn't say it was okay. It wasn't. But I did offer her a chair. She sat. And for the first time in years, we talked. Not as mother and daughter. As 2 women, both complicit in a history neither of us wanted to repeat. When she left, she paused at the door. "It's beautiful what you're doing." I nodded, throat tight. "It will be." She didn't promise to come back, but something told me she would. The week before opening felt like a dream I didn't trust yet. Final inspections passed. The last light fixture was hung. The sign above the entrance, the orchard, gleamed softly under the street lamp. I stood across the road that night and stared at it for a long time. My reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. Older, steadier, changed. We held a soft opening for close friends, vendors, and early supporters. Esther came, the elderly woman who once adored my scones in the park. She brought a friend and wore a pink scarf like a queen. "Your mother's proud," she whispered before leaving. "Even if she doesn't say it the way you want." I smiled but said nothing. The next morning, I arrived early, 2 hours before opening. A man was standing on the sidewalk. My father. He hadn't knocked. He hadn't even come close to the door. He just stood there, staring at the sign like it was a stranger's name. I didn't move. I waited. After a long moment, he turned and looked at me. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "I saw Ethan last night," he said. "He said he signed it over to you." I nodded. He looked down at the pavement, then back at me. "You really did all this?" "Yes." He swallowed hard. "It was supposed to be his shot." I didn't flinch. "And it cost me mine." He nodded. "Once," then walked away. Opening day came with golden sunlight. We lit candles along the windowsills, placed flower bundles at each table, and filled the pastry case with rows of color and care. Peach tarts, lemon bars, honey lavender cookies. Behind the counter, I wore a simple white blouse and an apron stitched with the orchard's emblem. A small tree, roots showing. The doors opened at noon. Within the hour, the tables were full. Old neighbors, curious students, a local reporter. Even the cafe owner, who gave me my first break, came with her partner and asked for a bottle of rosé. Maya moved between tables, helping, smiling. The space buzzed. Not loud, not frantic, but alive. Late in the afternoon, I stepped outside for air. Across the street, Ethan was leaning against a lamppost. He didn't come closer, didn't wave, just watched. We locked eyes. For a second, I thought he'd sneer or mock. But he didn't. He gave me a short nod. And left. That was enough. I walked back inside and stood behind the counter, wiping down clean surfaces that didn't need it, just for the stillness. A customer walked up, an older woman with silver hair and tired eyes. She studied the menu, then looked at me. "This place," she said. "It feels like it was always supposed to be here." I smiled. "It just needed the right roots." And as I handed her a slice of almond cake, I felt it settle deep inside me. Not triumph, not revenge, but something stronger. Peace.